Hi, sixth graders. So in reading the Westing game, one of the things that we had been doing recently was we had read the newspaper article about Sam Westing being found dead on pages 18 through 20 in your book. And we also then had a worksheet that had a timeline that looked like this. And we had started to fill in some of the important events in Sam Westing's life on that timeline. So today, what I want to do is just make sure that we are all on the same page and that we all have this entire timeline filled in with all of the important events that we want on it in Sam Westing's life. Now, normally when we're in class, you guys talk with your partners, and then you give me some of your ideas for the important events that we're reading about in the book. Today, I'm just going to go ahead and give you the important events that I think you should have on this timeline so that we're all ready to move on to the next piece of information that we need tomorrow, okay? So, we did do some of this when some of you were in class last week. So some of you may already have this filled in for some of the events, but not all of them. So let's just go ahead and fill in all of our events. So your book, your worksheet already has that Sam Westing was born in the United States to immigrant parents. And it already has that the newspaper reported him dead at the age of 65. Okay? Then we read a little bit of that article again, and we listed some other important events. So one of the things that we listed that the text told us, because we're taking evidence from the text, we're taking exactly what the text is saying and we're adding it to our timeline. Right now, we're not inferring anything. We're looking at the evidence from the text and we're taking that evidence from there. So one of the things that we talked about was that 13 years before he died, he was sued by an inventor and then injured in a car crash, and that he mysteriously disappeared. So that was down here. So on your timeline, you should write down that he was sued by an inventor that he was severely injured in a car crash, and probably most importantly, that he mysteriously disappeared. Okay, so if you do not have that written, hopefully you can see that okay. If you don't have that written down on your timeline, you should copy that down onto your timeline. And this happened 13 years before he died. So this span of time here, from the time that this happened, where he mysteriously disappeared, until he was found dead, was 13 years. And we know that because it says in our book, Samuel W. Westing, the mysterious industrialist who disappeared 13 years ago, was found dead in his Westinghouse mansion last night. Okay, that's on page 18. So 13 years, this is what happened. Okay, we also read, as we continued reading on page 18 in the article, it says the only child of immigrant parents, orphaned at the age of 12, self-educated, hard-working, Samuel Westing saved his laborer's wages and bought a small paper mill. From these meager beginnings, he built the giant Westing Paper Products Corporation and founded the city of Westingtown to house his thousands of workers and their families. His estate is estimated to be worth over $200 million. Okay, so some of the things that we had added onto our timeline from that reading was that we already had that he was born to immigrant parents, but one important thing that happened after he was born, or was early in his life, I should say, was that he was orphaned at the age of 12. That's pretty important. That's a big event in his life, right? So he had no parents. He was orphaned at the age of 12. So we're going to write that down as an important event. So if you don't have that on your timeline yet, you should add that. I'm going to turn off the lights and see if this glare goes away. Maybe a little bit better. Let's see. Okay, another important event that happened was that we read in this paragraph was that he bought a small paper mill, right? Okay, that was pretty important because that was kind of the beginnings of his corporation. It also said here that from this small paper mill, he built the huge Westing Paper Products Corporation, and he even founded the city of Westingtown. That was pretty important. So from buying the small paper mill, he then bought the Westing Paper Products, or built the Westing Paper Corporation. Not only did he take this small paper mill and build it into a huge corporation, but he even founded a city. So that's pretty important. Okay, so it's kind of important to know that he was an orphan. He worked really hard. He bought a small paper mill. He changed it into a huge corporation where he even founded a town where his employees could live. Important information. Okay. So then we went on reading, and we said, so Turtle's still reading the article. Turtle read that again. $200 million. Wow. When asked the secret of his success, the industrialist always replied, "Clean living, hard work, and fair play." Westing set his own example. He neither drank nor smoked and never gambled. Yet he was a dedicated gamesman and a master at chess. Turtle had been in the game room. That's where she picked up the billiard cue she had carried up the stairs as a weapon. A great patriot, Sam Westing was famous for his fun-filled 4th of July celebrations. Whether disguised as Ben Franklin or a lowly drummer boy, he always acted a role in the elaborately staged pageants which he wrote and directed. Perhaps best remembered was his surprise portrayal of Betsy Ross. Games and feasting followed the pageant. And at sunset, Mr. Westing put on his Uncle Sam costume and set off fireworks from his front lawn. The spectacular pyrotechnic display could be viewed 30 miles away. Fireworks. So that's what was in those boxes stamped "Danger Explosives" stacked in the ground floor storeroom. What a pyrotechnic display that would make if they all went off at the same time. The Paper King's later years were marred by tragedy. His only daughter, Violet, drowned on the eve of her wedding, and 2 years later, his troubled wife deserted their home. Although Mr. Westing obtained a divorce, he never remarried. Okay, we're going to stop there. And there were a couple of other really big events that happened in Mr. Westing's life at this time. Can you think what they were? Well, one of the things, right, was that his only daughter drowned the night before her wedding. So we're going to put that on our timeline. Pretty important event in his life, his daughter drowning. It also said at this time in his personal life that his wife left him and they divorced. So we're going to add that to this list too. Okay, so those were some pretty big things that happened during Sam Westing's life. Please make sure that you have all of these written onto your timeline. Okay, so the book on page 19 continues. 5 years later, he was sued by an inventor over rights to the disposable paper diaper. On his way to court, Samuel Westing and his friend, Dr. Sidney Sykes, were involved in a near-fatal automobile accident. Both men were hospitalized with severe injuries. Sykes resumed his Westingtown medical practice and the post of county coroner. But Westing disappeared from sight. It was rumored, but never confirmed, that he controlled the vast Westing Paper Products Corporation from a private island in the South Seas. He is still listed as chairman of the board. So the important event that we learned about in that paragraph, we actually already put on our timeline. That he was sued by an inventor, that he was severely injured in a car crash, and then he mysteriously disappeared. Okay, so please make sure you have that on your timeline. So, we talked a lot about the American dream before we even started reading this book, right? I want you to think about this. I believe that Ellen Raskin used the life of Samuel Westing to communicate the idea of the American dream. Remember we said that she was inspired by the American dream when she wrote it? So she used Samuel Westing's life to kind of show the American dream to her readers. How does Sam Westing's life portray the idea of the American dream? Do you have any ideas? Well, I will tell you. Part of the American dream, right, is going from rags to riches. That anything is possible if you work hard enough, right? That everyone here in the United States has an equal opportunity to become whatever they want. So Ellen Raskin did use that idea of being able to go from rags to riches, an orphan to founding a town in the life of Samuel Westing as the American dream. Okay, so we are going to write that right underneath this timeline, this heading of this timeline. Okay, so we are going to say the American dream, rags to riches. All right, so Sam Westing's life is an example of the American dream, going from an orphan of being born of immigrant parents, becoming an orphan at 12 years old, and then building a huge corporation where he even founded a town. Okay, that is an example of the American dream, rags to riches. All right, so please just make sure that you have all these notes filled in on your timeline. And then we will continue tomorrow with the next set of reading. Have a good day.